Hi, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Self. As I said in my previous video, I'm having to film in the evenings at the moment because my little boy's dropped his nap time, and so hopefully the lighting is still okay. So today I'm going to be talking about non-fiction November. So as I again mentioned in my last video, I'm not exclusively reading non-fiction. I've got other commitments that I want to read this month, and also I have library books, which are the main thing because they're going to be due back soon. And so I'm not exclusively doing non-fiction. However, I've got some non-fiction which is sitting on my TBR shelf at the moment, so I've pulled those off basically to discuss them. There are books that I've mentioned before on this list, but personally, when I see people talk about books more than once, it doesn't bother me because it just like reinforces the ones that I thought, oh yeah, I did want to read that and I need to put that on my TBR. So I have loads and loads of non-fiction because I love non-fiction, and so that's why I've just picked the ones that I'm going to get to soon. So first of all, I've got, just trying not to drop them all on the floor. So I've got this book is the first one, which my friend Hannah lent me, and it's called A Woman in Billin, and it's actually anonymous, so we don't know who wrote this. And it's the wartime diary of a lady who is in Germany during World War II, and it starts on the 20th of April 45 and it ends on the 22nd of June 1945, so it's only 3 months worth of her diaries. And the fact that we don't know who wrote it, I think, is just so mysterious and intriguing. So it was obviously just found, and it's this person's experience and we don't even know who they are, which is kind of sad and heartbreaking, but makes it more intriguing at the same time. So that's that one. The next one is one which I pulled out my TBR jar in May, and it's now November and I still haven't read it. And that is another, I was just going to say another non-fiction, obviously, because it's non-fiction November. This is a memoir, and this is called A Fort of Nine Towers by Qais, Akbar, Omar. And this is, it says, the first true life memoir of growing up in Afghanistan. And so it says that he was 11 when a civil war engulfed Kabul, and it brought an abrupt end to a childhood filled with kites and cousins in his grandfather's garden, and one of the most convulsive decades in Afghan history had begun. It talks about the Taliban and the arrival of international forces in 2001. So I think it's going to be fascinating because the only books I can think of that I've read from this setting are Khalid Hosseini's books, and I absolutely love his books. And it's so interesting to read about what Afghanistan used to be like when it was a peaceful place to live, because all we hear obviously on the news is what it's been like since 9/11, and it's I think this is going to be really fascinating to read. And then the next one is one that I also picked out of my TBR jar for May. So there's 3 of these on this list, and that is Walden by Henry David Thoreau. This is a book which I'm sure most people know. So it's his memoir of living and building his own house in the woods and living self-sufficiently, and he called the cottage, or the house that he built, Walden. It's set in New England. It's about getting back to nature. I have this like actually, like since I've been a parent, fantasy of doing an off-grid existence and living self-sufficiently, and this is kind of a memoir of what it's like, and it's a very old book, so I think it's from the 1800s, 1854. So yeah, obviously it's going to be a bit different to what it means to be off-grid now, but I'm still excited to read it. And then the last one that I picked from my TBR jar in May, which I'm yet to read, is a memoir by Sue Perkins called Spectacles. So I'm sure everybody knows who Sue Perkins is, but she's a British comedian and presenter, and she was the host or co-host of the Great British Bake Off until it moved on to Channel 4. And this is her autobiography, and she's very funny, so I'm sure it's going to be really entertaining, and I really like her as a person. And I always say I really want to get to the sea, and I do. I just got so many things to read in a good way. The next one is another one that I borrowed from Hannah, who lent me the book about the German diary. And this is our Symphony with Animals by Aysha Akbar, and she is a physician in America, and she's written a book about how human and animal lives intertwine, and about the benefits that we can get from each other, and the sort of emotional bonds that we can forge, and how it can help us physically and mentally. And she suffered abuse as a child, and this book came about because she then met or had a dog who had been abused, and she felt like they had this kind of bond in common, that they both understood what it felt like. And that's how this book sort of came about, and she travels around America and talks to people about their stories of their interactions with animals. So that sounds very beautiful. And then the last three, so one of them is one that I mentioned in my last haul, and that is Breaking and Mending by Joanna, which is her story of her time as a junior doctor, and it's about compassion and burnout, and it's quite a short book. She is now a very well-known writer, so she doesn't practice medicine anymore, and so it's really of interest to me. This is from the Welcome collection, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I've heard really good things about it from the people who I've seen review it on BookTube. The last two I feel like I've mentioned about 100 times, so I apologise for mentioning these ones again. So this one I'm about to mention has to either go back to the library tomorrow or be renewed again for the 4th time. And I guess I haven't quite been in the mood for it yet, but I love the cover and the premise, and it's Our Place by Mark Cocker. It's about saving Britain's wildlife, and about how whilst we're supposedly some of the biggest wildlife lovers in the world, we've actually got some of the worst track record for environmental spaces, and how we treat our world spaces. So that's that, and I just so love the cover. It's just so gorgeous. And then the last one, which I mention every month at the moment, is Constellations by Sinead Gleeson, which I really need to read because a patient lent it to me. And it is about our bodies, what our bodies go through, and it's written in little essays. So I could probably read this alongside another one off the list, because I could just read a couple of essays at a time. So yeah, so that is my list for non-fiction November. I thought of like a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. Last year I just read non-fiction, but then I was craving some fiction by the end. So yeah, I'm just doing a little bit of nov, a little bit of my TBR, and a little bit of non-fiction November. So let me know, have you got any plans for this? Are you taking part in non-fiction November? Are you using the prompts, which I'm not? Sorry, I feel like I'm talking so fast. I'm not using the prompts because I kind of like having free reign a little bit. And yeah, just tell me what your plans are. Tell me if you've read any of the ones that I've just mentioned, and if you'd like to read any, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.